All right, so in the last video, we reviewed the economic surplus, and now in this one, we're going to look at what happens if we open up to trade. So this current one that we did already is a world in, we can call this a world in autarky. Autarky means no opportunity to trade. So that means no international trade. We can trade. Well, you could have autarky for a single family, but in this case, we're considering within our country we're trading, but we have no international trade. So now we're going to come back to the same idea, but then we're going to have the opportunity for trade to occur. All right. So now the big change we're going to have is we're going to allow uh, for trade, and so when you allow for trade, you have the option. You can either buy it from your domestic producers, or you can buy it from other countries, right? You can buy it from other countries, and so we're going to have what we're going to bring in here is we're going to have a world price. Okay, so let me make I don't know, make it purple. So we're going to have a world price. Um, I'm going to make it thicker so it's easy to see. Okay, we're going to have a world price, and in this case, I'm going to assume the world price for tires is cheaper than our domestic production. And so this is not always the case. Sometimes the world price is higher, but in this case, I'm just going to assume that it's lower. Okay, and we're making several assumptions. Some of them are not completely realistic, but uh, we're not ready in the intro class to make it as realistic as possible. And so this still gives us the basic flavor. So let's assume there's a world price, and we're making the world price as a flat line. So what this means is it's flat because compared to the world, we're assuming we're very small. This is not very accurate for large countries like the US or China, but it's pretty accurate for most countries. So this flat line means we are a price taker compared to the world. Okay, so that means our country's output and our country's demand is not big enough to have a big influence on the world price. So when we come into the market, before we're in autarky, we're living separate from everybody else. We come in the world market, we don't expect it to have a big effect on the world market. Now, again, that's true for most countries that are relatively, small markets. It's probably true. It's probably not true for the U.S. and China. The only difference between this and what we'd have to do, we'd have to show the graph being curved for the world price not being flat. But again, we're just going to do it as this because this is all we can handle right now mathematically. Okay, so here we go. So we have a world price. So now we're not stuck just buying from the domestic producers. We can buy from the foreign producers as well. And so we're going to say, well, you can buy as much as you want, and that's what the flat line means. The buyers can buy as much as they want at this world price. So we can easily see what they're going to choose. I'll make this part in red to make it easy to see. So they're going to choose here, right? That's where the marginal benefit equals price for the world. So they keep buying. They're not going to stop at Q star. They're going to go higher. They're going to keep buying because now they can buy it at a cheaper price. So they'll go all the way up to here. So this is the quantity demanded. Okay. But for the producers, it's not worth it for them to sell at this low price. So some of them, the more inefficient producers, some of them are going to stop producing. So we would have a cutback in production on this. So they're going to choose to supply here. So some firms will still supply. You can see those ones here. This one's is still getting supplied, right? That one's still getting supplied. This is the red part is still getting supplied by the domestic side. But then what is this rest of this coming from? So the rest of this difference here to here is being imported. And we're going to do the same thing to show what exports look like later on. So these are imports. So from QD to QS, so that is being imported. All right, that quantity is being imported. And so we have now we have trade. So the with trade, we have a gap between how much is produced and how much is consumed domestically. If the amount being consumed domestically is greater than the amount being produced domestically, we're having imports. And later on, if the opposite is occurring, then we are having exports. So, anyways, all right, and everything is occurring at this world price. Now let's see the producer surplus and the consumer surplus under this new regime. I will keep the producer to be green. So now the producer is selling this much at this price, the world price. And so this is still marginal cost. So this is their, for that unit, that's their benefit. They get this price, they have this much cost, and so on. We go on this whole section. Okay, this whole section shows our producer surplus. So what we can notice from that is our producer surplus is much smaller than before. And that makes sense. We would not expect the producers to like imports, right? That often the producers will be the ones who are against imports, at least imports of their particular product. They're usually happy to import components or raw materials, but they don't want their particular product to be imported. Okay, but we can't just stop there. It's not enough just to say, well, it hurts the producers, therefore it's good, or therefore it's bad. So let's go on and see the other side of this. So let's do orange. I'll pick orange since. Okay, so on the consumer side, they like it this much. This is the marginal benefit, and it only costs them this much. So there's a big consumer surplus, and so on. This whole section, but it goes beyond where we were before because they make purchases beyond where we were before. So we're gonna go all the way over to here, and we're gonna stop there. So this whole thing is consumer surplus. Okay, so the whole thing is consumer surplus. So we lose producer surplus, but when we have imports, we gain a lot of consumer surplus. And so our economic surplus is still this consumer surplus plus the producer surplus. And it is greater than autarky. Okay, if we go back up to remind you what it looked like, right? It was just the big triangle. And now we have the big triangle plus something. Okay, we have the big triangle plus something, and I will highlight that. We have plus this. This is extra. So it's greater than that by this triangle. So it's greater than it was before by this, right? So sometimes this triangle is called the gains to trade. Okay, this is gains to trade. So yep, so that's the basic idea. So with this, we end up consuming more than we produce because we're importing. The price ends up being lower than it would be if we were on our own and not trading. It ends up being quite a bit lower. That's one of the reasons when you hear some discussions about trade, the trade-off of restricting trade often is seen to be higher prices, but at the benefit of having more production locally. And the total surplus here is larger than if we had no trade. Okay, so yes, the producer of this good is probably not happy, but overall the total surplus for the economy is larger. We'll talk later about some of the other things that don't show up in this graph, other considerations you might want to make when considering about restricting trade or not. Some of it might depend on how important this good is. How important is it to have a domestic supply of this good? At least in this case, we still have a domestic supply. Sometimes with imports, the graph, I'm not going to draw every possible graph, but sometimes the graph would look very different. For example, maybe the domestic ability to supply is almost non-existent. For example, if you think in the United States and then you think of some kind of tropical fruit, tropical product, or some product that needs special climate situation that probably only exists in the US, maybe in the state of Hawaii or in South Florida, Southern California. In that case, we probably don't have the capacity to supply what we want. It makes a lot of sense to import in that case. Some other cases, there might be arguments on either side. But one thing that we can make clear, at least using this way of analyzing it, is the benefit to the economy in terms of total economic surplus appears to be larger when we do allow imports. Okay, and this is how we would model it, and that yellow triangle in the middle is how we can see it. So anyways, we're going to do one more now. That's about exports, and then we'll talk about how trade is restricted, and then some other things that will not be in these videos is going to be like some of the other arguments that go along with trade.